Welcome everyone, thanks for joining. So we have two cars entered into the Basic Racing League. So Basic Racing League is a league that's been set up by Basic Ollie. He's another YouTube streamer. And we have two cars entered. We have a LMDH and we also have the Porsche GT3. So myself, Rory and Luke are in the Porsche GT3. And that's the car we're mainly going to focus on, but we do also have our sister team in the LMDH, so we're going to have a look at some of the footage that our sister team has gone through with the LMDH. So to start with, we're going to focus on our sister car, the LMDH, and we are starting with Ole. He is P7, and he's going to take it away for Spartan eRacing. And you can see there are a couple of classes. There is the LMDH up the front. Just behind them there was the LMP2s, and behind them is the group of us in the GT3s. We are starting P2 in the GT3s. That's with Luke as the starting driver, who also did our quali for us, did a fantastic lap, did a 145, really low 145, so absolutely fantastic lap. But as you can see, we are go, safety car is in, so field is go. We've kept our position in P7, and as normal, first corner and all hell breaks loose. So a couple of big accidents. We've gone from P7 and I think we actually land up around about P4 at this point, and that's because three cars either were taken out or took themselves out in that first corner. Yeah, so we're up to P4 at this point. But let's go back and have a look at what those incidents were. So the guy in P2 comes around, a little bit of netcode. It looked like he was about half a foot away from the guy that was in P3, but unlucky there and managed to get away with just a slide, didn't actually get any damage. And then further down, the guy tries to miss. I think he thought maybe he's going to swing in towards him, so he tried to avoid him. Got onto the paint and then slid, and that was it. His car was a total wreck. He lost the backing completely, smashed the wall, and I think he actually landed up in the pits for quite a while after that. So we are there. We are P2. We are the red and black Porsche, and we are next to the black and green Ferrari. Really good start by Luke, managed to keep us in P2, no drama. The guy behind us is right on our tail, 0.1 seconds behind us, literally not much of a gap between us. The Ferrari around Watkins was much faster in a straight line than the Porsche was, but we found that the Porsche was a bit more forgiving. So if you ride any of the curbs a little bit too much, then in the Porsche you would be able to get away with it. In the Ferrari there was a likelihood that potentially you could land up in the wall because you've gone and smashed up the car because you bounced over a curb and not been able to control the bounce. So the first couple of laps, as you can see right at the top of the screen, we've got the lap counters. So at this point, Crew Chief thinks we're going to do, or Race Lab should I say, thinks we're going to do about 134 laps based on current pace and the amount of time that's left. And what we start to do now is we settle down, tyres are beginning to get warm, and what we want to do is bring it to the end. So we're going to go a little bit safe to a degree, but also try and pick up positions where we can, defend where we can, but not defend too hard. It is a very long race. There are many laps to do around Watkins, so just keeping it on the black stuff, keeping it clean was our key goal for our stints. And you do find in endurance racing, if you're one of the ones who can keep it clean, then you will likely be able to finish, and hopefully finish in the top sort of 5 or 10. But you can see, if you look at the little track map on the top right, we've already lost sort of the 4 back markers. They're already half a straight behind us, they're quite far back. The top 3 are breaking away, so Luke, the guy in P1 and the guy in P3 is breaking away. And we're on lap 6, and only 6 laps in and the traffic has started. So the first LMDH is coming past, given lots of room, and now there's going to be a whole ton of them going past. So I thought I'd go through this where the traffic first hits us so that you could sort of see the amount of traffic and how fast that traffic is going compared to us. I mean, by the time we're through sort of the first bit there, that other car's already gone. The LMDH is just gone. So they are much quicker than the GT3s. So plodding along, you can see we were 2 seconds ahead of P3 when the traffic started, and now that we're halfway through the traffic, we have lost half a second to P3. So traffic can give you time, but it can also take time, and it's one of those, you know you're going to lose, you're going to get back. It's a win-lose constant battle whenever there's traffic. Sometimes you'll pick up places, other times you won't. Other times you can use the traffic to your advantage and maybe get past another car. And then other times, if you try and use the traffic to your advantage, you'll end up getting in the way of traffic, or the traffic thinks that you're going to do something different than you actually did and lands up hitting you and taking you out. So even in traffic, I know we're losing a little bit of time because we're taking it a bit more cautious, but our aim is to get to the end. So we're lifting a little bit to give the traffic the line into the corners rather than sort of fight with them. So we're coming into lap 9. We still have the Ferrari right behind us. Because of the traffic, they've managed to sort of keep up with us. And the traffic's actually going to play into the Ferrari's hand over here. You can see he ducked in right behind the cars that were going past us, so we couldn't duck in between him and them. So he basically got the inside of the line going in, and kudos to him, it was really well done. So we had to basically give it the position and then start to follow him. And you can see more traffic's coming out of the pits, so those are people who'd been in the pits. So we're only 10 laps in, so there must have been people who had an incident. We are then racing really close with the Ferrari. Luke a couple of times thought he might be able to push past, but the issue we're finding with the Ferrari is even though the Porsche is close in the corners, we're able to catch right up. Going down the straight, the Ferrari does pull away from the Porsche. So the Porsche definitely was not the best option for here for ultimate speed, but for an endurance race we wanted safety rather than ultimate speed. You can see there's been a massive incident. So what happens is our P1, the green and black Ferrari, is going slower than the LMDH thinks, and the LMDH tries to miss it, gets a bit of a slide on, and that's it. Takes out a couple of other LMDHs, and next thing we know, a full course yellow has been called. And Basic Racing League is one of the leagues where we do have full course yellows, and we also have safety cars. So at this point it's just a full course yellow, so you have to slow down to sort of pit speed, and then the safety car actually does get deployed. So that was lap 10, the safety car got deployed. We are now on lap 20, and the safety car is about to come in, and we are getting ready to go. So you can see in front of the GT3s there are 4 LMP2s left, and in front of the LMP2s is the whole line of LMDHs, apart from a couple who had lots of damage, and they're either in the pits or they've actually pulled out completely because of the amount of damage they had. So fairly good start from behind the safety car, single file start instead of dual file like we did for the original start of the race. And P1 and P2 get going in the Ferrari. They got so much more grunt down the straights than we do, so get caught napping just slightly, and that very quickly, if you look at the top left, you can see the gap. We're already 1.7 seconds behind the leader and a second behind P2. And the Mercedes has lots of good grunt in the engine as well, and is also faster down the straight. So you can see him gaining, and managing to stay ahead of him slightly, so the corners are ours and so on. But yes, this is quite a hectic drive that we now have to do. And like with any safety car, you sort of think we've got ahead of all the traffic, we're well ahead. We were happily sitting in P3 right behind the Ferrari, hopefully about to go for an overtake, and all of a sudden P4's right behind us. We now have lost a bit of a gap to the Ferrari ahead, which means also we're out of the tow, which in the Ferrari can be quite bad. So looking at our sister car, so they are in P7 again, actually P6, and they go, and you can see straight away the P1 driver was gone. He put his foot down as soon as the safety car went in. P1 was gone. We get a good drive out, but then through the corner, brake a little bit heavier than the guy behind us. He manages to pull alongside us, and we land up sort of fighting over P7. And we start to get into the rhythm, but also the tires are cold, so it's also a little bit slippery, and you can see lots of very close running. And then one lap later, we're now on lap 23 for them, and we go over the curb, and the curb bounces us, and that's it. Ollie, the race is done. So loads and loads and loads of damage, and you can see just a little bit too much on the curb, spins the back, flicks it left and right, and smashes into the barrier, and the car is completely destroyed. So the rear tires, they're actually squonk, and the repair was very, very long, so we sort of called it a day. I think they did do a repair, came out, but the car wasn't right and couldn't be driven, so we then called it a day with that. So back to the GT3s, we are now sitting in P3, happily going along. We're on lap 25, and there is another safety car called. I didn't actually get what the safety car was for. I think there was, if there was more than 4x at a time, then a safety car would be called. So if there was 5x or more, then a safety car would be called within a specific number of seconds. So they called the safety car. Safety car was there for 3 laps. We're now on lap 28 going into lap 29. And once again we P3. We got a much better drive out of the last corner this time, managing to keep up with the 2 Ferraris in front of us, but so did that Mercedes. That purple and green Mercedes is so fast down the straights when they're in our slipstream. Where we get away is through the corners. So we're just hoping that we're able to get away for a little bit and see how that sort of pans out over. But yeah, you can see very close running. It does, one of the good things with the safety cars, I know some guys were against it, some guys are for it. I quite like the safety car. I think maybe 10 laps with the safety car like we had in the first one. We were lap 10 when it was called, and we got released on lap 20, but that was because of people going out of position when they shouldn't have been given the go around and so on. I do think the safety car does bring in an element of change, and does make you have to think about your strategy. So we completely had to re-strategize now. We had planned a whole strategy out where we were doing shorter stints, and we were going to do 1 extra stop, but the extra stop would actually work out quicker in the Porsche overall than doing sort of longer stints. So Luke's coming into the pits in lap 32, we were P3. We're coming out now, because of the safety cars, we only had like 5 laps running in between, so we're coming out in P6. And you can see right behind us is a Ferrari, and that Ferrari actually later on in the race will be one that we're racing really closely with, and you'll see what I mean. So Rory's now in the car, and he has cold tires, but so does the Ferrari behind. And his aim is to keep it clean, put some laps in, see if we can get our position back. Everyone else should pit. We do think the Ferraris had better fuel than we did. I think they actually had a bigger tank, so they were running a lap, maybe even 2 laps longer than we were able to run in the Porsche, which is one of the reasons we had a slightly different strategy. But then, as I said, the safety car completely messed up. So coming into the end of lap 33, we go into lap 34, and the Mercedes in front of us has now pitted. They were behind us before the pit stop. We obviously took a bit of a longer pit stop, or maybe a slightly longer out lap, and they are ahead of us. However, they are ahead of us on cold tires, so this is the time to pounce. And Watkins is one of those places, it is really hard to overtake. There's no sort of very, very long straights that you can pull up behind them like Fuji, where you get a really good run and you can slingshot them. Watkins has a couple of long-ish straights, but nothing that you can sort of say, yeah, that's a good 3/4 of a kilometer that we can just easily breeze past it. But Rory gets past him really well, and then this car coming past, actually up, the LMDH just sits on the racing line, and what that means is we have to go really wide all the way around the corner, and because of the angle of that corner, it actually is quite slippery out there, so we are a lot slower out of the corner than we should have been. And even though we had gained half a second on the Mercedes gets past because of traffic, and now Rory's in between the Mercedes and the Ferrari. So the Ferrari is very close to us as well. We were pulling away from it quite nicely, but because of traffic and the Mercedes coming out of the pits and so on, we're now sort of sandwiched between a Mercedes and a Ferrari. And you know what? One of the things I do love about iRacing is with endurance races, it's still really close racing at times. But then there are also times like this that's about to happen now where it's just, you know, somebody's breakpoint is slightly different from what your breakpoint is. And when you're running within a tenth of a second, things happen. So no one's at fault. We got punted by the Ferrari, which Rory managed to save. Fantastic, Rory. The Mercedes actually went wide. He was going to turn into the corner, and then he actually straightened up and he went wide, which allowed us to then get in ahead of both of them. So we kept our position, and because we were now ahead of both of them and we'd broken the toe, Rory was beginning to pull away. So you can see behind us 1.1 seconds, 1.3 seconds, 1.4, and now 1.6 behind them is the Ferrari and the Mercedes. So the Ferrari and the Mercedes are now sort of in their own little battle, and we're able to just slowly pull away. And this is lap 35 that we're starting to pull away like this. So Rory puts in some good laps. Lap 36, that Mercedes that is just behind us gets tapped, and I feel sorry for the Mercedes. I think the Mercedes was taking the full race line, but in an earlier race during the week, we actually had a similar issue where we were going through this first right-hander and the second corner, which is a left-hander. We took the race line. The LMDH didn't think we would, and it hit us. And I think here the LMDH thought, okay, they're staying to the left, I'll go down the right side, I'll take the inside line, which is the race line, and the Mercedes just thought, I'll take the race line. So a problem with a large S configuration like that is when traffic is passing, they're not sure, are you going to take the race line or are you giving them space? So it's a racing incident, that one for me. I think the Mercedes possibly could have given the LMDH more space, especially for us knowing what we knew about it. We gave lots of people lots of room around there, because that is one of the places the LMDH has caught us a lot. So we are now on lap 50. The Ferrari, Mike Gaff, is right behind us again. He's caught up a lot. I think Rory's beginning to struggle with the tyres. We've been on the tyres for 18 laps, I think it is already, and we've got another sort of couple of laps left, I think, of the stint, or another 5 laps left of the stint. So he's been on there for a while. Mike has actually been sitting really close to us, and once again, you know, the traffic uses the race line, goes on the outside, which means we had to stick to the inside, which means our line was compromised, so our speed was compromised down that straight, and actually it gives Mike a really good easy run on Rory, and he just goes breezing past. But we are now in P4, and we are going to keep battling in P4 for basically the two of us. Mike and Rory are battling for P3, and it's a good little battle. You can see P1 and P2 are well ahead of us, and then something happens. We go past P2 in the pits, and they're gone for a scheduled pit stop. We're on lap 63, so we're getting close to when we're going to pit stop as well. But you can see the Mercedes behind us is the one that got hit, and they're a full lap down now. Rory comes on into the pits. His stint is finished. Did a 31 lap stint, and job's a good one. So going to hand the car back to Luke. So initially I was going to get in the car at this point, but because we were battling with Mike, I knew that I was a good 1.5 seconds, maybe even 2 seconds slower than Luke, and probably 1.5 seconds slower than Rory. So we knew that for me, if I got in the car, Luke would have to do either 2 short double stints, or we would have to try and do a full stint and then see what happened. So we decided to change our strategy completely, put Luke back in the car, and see if he could build up a good sort of 30-second gap ahead of Mike, because he was a good sort of second a lap quicker than Mike. But the thing that needed to happen first is he needed to catch Mike and get past Mike. So lap 65, you can see we're in P3 now, and P1 I think is in the pits, or Mike's in the pits. He's just coming out of the pits now, so he is 1.3 seconds, 1.2 seconds ahead of us. The out lap where Luke came out with cold tires, we couldn't push as you would normally push, so Mike was able to push really hard. Luke came out with cold tires, needed a lap or two to settle in, and Mike is still ahead of us, but only by a second, so now we're going to push hard. Lap 69, so 3 laps later, you can see we are right on Mike's tail. And one of the things I love, as I said earlier, is the close racing. So Luke tries to send it down the inside, Mike's not having any of it and just keeps pushing around the outside, manages to get a better drive off the corner. That's another corner in Watkins where it does feel like the car wants to let go for no reason. It's almost like the inside of the corner is a little bit slippery, and I've seen quite a few accidents there, so it's always one that you prefer to be a little safe than sorry. So Luke gives up the corner there, and we have traffic coming up with us now, and we're going to try and use some of the traffic like people have used with us and managed to get past us. So we let them past, and now coming into this corner they pull in front, which doesn't really aid us too much, but what it does mean is that Mike in front of us has the draft, and so do we have the draft, so probably not going to happen on this corner coming up. But as you can see, really close racing, and for some reason we get a fairly good drive out. We've gone from 0.4 or 0.5 down to 0.3 again, and right on Mike's tail again, and we're just going to keep pushing. And you can even see on the little track map that Luke in that last sector did a purple sector, so fastest of the race, which is fantastic, pushing really hard, but also we did have the draft for that purple sector. Give him a dummy to the outside, and does he give in? No, he doesn't. He holds his position, he's not falling for that. However, he is compromised because he had to stay on the inside and couldn't go out to the outside because that's where Luke was. He is slightly compromised, but it doesn't actually do anything. And you can see now Luke's actually put in another purple sector, so Luke is pushing really hard at this point, trying to pull away, get enough of a run out of one of the corners where maybe Mike doesn't get as good a run as Luke does, and just put a good pass on him if we can. And I think at this point they were running 145.5, 145.6, somewhere around there, or even maybe 145.8, but they were running in the 145s, and my sort of optimum lap is a 145.9, and my sort of fastest race lap was a 146.6. So a good second faster than I could even think of going. And then more traffic, and this time the traffic actually helps a little bit because they were on the inside of Mike there, so you can see from Luke's perspective getting right close up with Mike, but still no luck. That Ferrari is really fast in a straight line, but then Mike has a bit of a slide. That slide enables us to pull alongside him, and as soon as we're alongside him we've got the inside line and we're going to outbrake him and pull away, or at least hopefully try and pull away. But now that Mike's in the slipstream and in the Ferrari, which is faster than the Porsche, Mike's going to try his damnedest to keep up with us and push on like he's doing. So you can see he's really close, 0.00. I mean, they're so close, the iRacing doesn't even think there's a gap between them. So, and then I'm not sure what that was about, just a little sort of tap Mike's front wheel on Luke's back wheel. But it did upset Mike's car a little bit, and we managed to get a second gap, and I think that was just a racing incident, nothing meant by either driver, middle of the track, and they both just touched each other. So, and that was it for the battle, I think. So Luke started to, now that Mike is out of the draft, out of the tow of Luke, you can see we're on lap 95. And Luke is 24 seconds ahead of Mike and only 14 seconds ahead behind the leader. So Luke's done a fantastic stint, giving me the car. I've got another 28 laps to do, so almost a full stint, not quite, but we put in enough for sort of 30 laps just in case, because you never know what might happen. You know, it might I'm more heavy-footed than Luke and Rory, so I seem to use more fuel. Only by 0.1 of a litre, but still 0.1 of a litre after 30 laps is 3 litres. So we put in enough for 30, and I came out and I had a lot of space. When I came out, the guys behind me were actually lapped. So I had lap cars behind me, and the only cars in front of me were P1 and P2. And I was just going to run my race and try keep the distance. I knew that when Mike came in, he would come out probably 15 seconds behind me, maybe even 18 seconds if I'm lucky. And the guy in P1, he was long gone, so I didn't have a hope of catching him. But I am running a second, maybe second and a half, even on some laps 2 seconds slower than Luke was running. But I'm also trying to be really cautious. I'm doing the last stint. We're in it for the podium, so I'm thinking, you know what, once Mike's pitted, we will come past. And you can see now we're on lap 97. Mike has actually gone into the pits, and we pass him in the pits. And when he comes out of the pits, I think he lands up about 14 or 15 seconds behind us. So I did the math in my head, and the sort of speeds he was running versus the speeds I was running. I've got 25 laps left, and he was only 3/4 of a second quicker than me, so I should easily be able to keep him off. He should possibly get to 3 maybe 4 seconds behind me, but P2 looked like he was in the back. And then that happened to P1. Same place as the earlier Ferrari. P1 just didn't give enough space, I don't think, or got a bit spooked by the LMDH that went on the grass. He then clipped the wall and towed, and that's on lap 99, and full course yellow gets called and the safety car is out. So we now have the situation I was dreading. I was hoping that we'd have the situation earlier, and then Luke could maybe do some more laps, but now I've got enough fuel in the car to get me to the end. And the people who I was behind are so far ahead that I'm sort of a full lap behind them because I'm stuck behind the safety car. They're actually ahead of me, which means they're in front of the safety car. They're going to be able to go all the way around to the back. But Mike, who we were running with, is gone. So Mike is no longer a threat. And he was the only person who was a threat. So I was happy that I was P2 still. P1 is there, and what it does mean though is it means that other people, like the person who was in P4, now has the opportunity to be in P3 and come up right behind us. So it then completely changes the driving style and what have you, and I just thought, you know what, we're probably going to land up in P4, and then this happens. So the LMDH is running out of fuel, the one who's pulled off to the left. Everyone else slows down, and what happens is the orange and black Ferrari in the background heavily brakes. So he brakes quite heavily, and then he doesn't change side, and because he brakes so heavily, the cars behind him actually came to a stop and crashed into each other. So the one whose car is now going sideways was the P1 driver. This blue and red Ferrari was P1. So that now means that as the P1 driver has now been taken out, you can see he's completely, his chassis is completely bent. But now because he's been taken out, it means I am P1. And Sandro, who was behind, was it Rory or Luke, the black and orange Ferrari, they are right behind me. So P1 and P2, we are the only two on the lead lap. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to push as hard as I can. I'm not going to push too hard and go crazy and smash into the wall. So I will be lifting a little bit and just being cautious, but I'm also going to push quite hard. And I've started to pull away a little bit from the P2 runner. And I'm thinking, okay, you know what, if I can keep them behind me, if I can even break the toe, I might be able to pull away a bit. But when they were racing with either Luke or Rory, I can't remember which one they were racing with, they were really close behind them. They were giving like a really good run for their money. And you can even see they've gone from 0.5 of a second to 0.2 of a second coming into here. And you know what? He just made my life a little bit easier, because he just went off into the bushes. Did the same thing that our LMDH did earlier, took too much of the curb, and as I said, the Ferrari, if you hit the curb too hard, it does bounce and spin a little bit. Managed to save it, so well done them for saving it, didn't let it go into the wall. But by the time they come back on the track, they are 7 seconds behind me. So now I'm thinking, okay, I've got maybe 12, 13 laps left to go. 7 seconds. I know that they're a second, maybe second and a half quicker than me, so it's going to be a race near the end, but I'm going to push on and I'm going to see how far I can get, because they were actually a much quicker driver, but I think because of an earlier issue they landed up in the pits for a while, and that's why they were almost a full lap down. But with the safety cars, it gives and it takes, and for us it sort of gave us P1 and also then put the person who was in P4 like a minute and a half behind us, right behind us. So the back markers now are in my toe, and they are running, because they're in my toe, they're running same pace as me, if not a little bit faster, because they're sitting in the toe. And the Mercedes and the Ferrari in between are really fast in straight lines. So now you'll see the Mercedes actually starts flashing me, sort of saying, hey, we coming through, get out the way, get out the way. So on lap 109 I let them through, and what it does is the Mercedes for some reason goes wide and he actually bumps into my front wheel, and it causes a tiny bit of damage, not a lot, but it did mean that the steering felt weird, and when I was braking it felt like it was pulling off towards the right. So I now had a tiny little bit of damage that was causing a little bit of drivability issue. So now I'm starting to stress, because the guy behind is 3.3 seconds, 3.1 seconds, 3 seconds, and I'm thinking, okay, you know what? Keep it on the track, keep it clean. We're going to settle for a place, for a P2 position. That's perfectly fine. That's what it is. We've done our best. What will be, will be. And then at this point, we're on lap 110, and we get notified that because the black and orange Ferrari is the one who slammed on brakes really heavily behind the safety car, they get a drive-through penalty. So that means they have to go into the pits, slow down to the pit speed, drive all the way through the pits. They don't have to stop. I don't think they had a stop and go. I think it was just a drive-through. They might have had a stop and go, maybe 5 seconds. So I'm thinking, okay, you know what? I don't need to fight. I have a little bit of damage. The car is pulling to the right whenever I'm braking. I do have a little bit of damage there, and I've got used to it by now. But I don't need to fight the guy behind me, because he does have a drive-through. So I'm going to keep with the traffic if I can, keep in their slipstream, keep in the toe, and when he does come up close behind me, I'm going to actually let him go. And if you listen to the broadcast, because this is broadcast live, and there's actually a team that does broadcast, they did a fantastic job, so well done to them. But I'll leave a note in the comments about this video as well, in the description of the video, so you can get to the broadcast. And I would watch that broadcast. Next time there's a BRL race, I will let you know. It will be week 13, which I think is December the 9th. It's going to be BRL, and it's going to be around Le Mans, and they will broadcast that as well. But you can see over here, I'm thinking, okay, he's right behind me. I'm not going to fight. It's pointless sort of me hitting him or him hitting me and ruining both of our races. Let them go past. They have to serve a penalty anyway. So at the end of the penalty, probably 10 seconds gap, and I've got another 10 laps left. So if I can keep a second a lap ahead of them, quids in. And then I realized I was actually running about a second and a half slower than them, so that then did potentially cause a bit of an issue. I needed a good 15 seconds to come out with 6 laps left, because that would then work out to 10 and a half seconds that they would catch up. So you can see I'm now, they are 10, 11, 12 seconds behind, 13 seconds, 14. So they come out of the pits 15 seconds behind us, 15 and a half seconds behind us. So I'm thinking, okay, we got 6 laps left, plus the one I'm on, which is 7. They're 15 seconds, going to lose second and a half, 2 seconds a lap. That's like cutting it so tight. It's going to be all the way down to the line. And I decided, you know what, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm going to keep running. I think I was running 147s or 148s. and I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I know I've got a little bit of damage. I don't want to cause an issue. I don't want to have a problem and crash. And then we get to lap 119 going into the last lap. Now, I didn't get the white flag to say it's my last lap because I'm still ahead of the LMDHs. And so I think this is my second last lap, because looking at the traffic where the LMDHs are, they're coming into the last corner now, the two little pink dots, about to go across the start finish line. That's P1 and 2 in the LMDHs, so I'm thinking they may catch me, but probably not. And if the Ferrari behind is now 3.7 seconds behind, I need to keep them behind for 2 full laps, which is doable, because I had 2 seconds at the start, and you can see I'm pulling away from them in some sections of the track and they're catching me on other sections of the track. So I thought I'll be able to keep him behind, and even if it's a last corner sort of dash that he tries to do, send it up the inside, I'll stick my car up the inside, because we're a lap ahead of all the other cars. Even if we crash at the end, if I'm ahead of him when we do crash, I'll still win the race at the end. So now we are sort of full mode, going for the win, putting everything in it, and I start pushing at this point, pushing within my limits. So I think I actually ran a 146 or 146.8 or something in my last lap, or second last lap, and it was really close, because I actually coming into the end, and I'll show you what I do, I realized that the LMDHs are right behind P2 coming into these corners. So you can see there's P2 and there's the two LMDHs who are fighting for P1 and P2. So I then see that they go past. My teammates who are spotting for me say the LMDHs have gone past. He's had to lift to let them pass, so I've now got 2.2 seconds. And I actually slam on brakes at this point. I slow down, and my teammates were absolutely screaming and shouting at me, but I slow down to let them pass so that my race is over. So you can see here, going along, and I'm getting up to 5th gear, and then I slow right down from 170 kilometers an hour down to 160 or 130 to let them go past, which means I'm now on the finish lap, get the black and white flag, and that is the win. Spartan eRacing taking home the win for the GT3 class in the BRL. So thank you Basic Ollie and all the guys who organized the Basic Racing League. They are absolutely fantastic, and I love this league. And you know what, the yellow flags and the safety cars, just give it another whole view of how racing goes. If you enjoyed this, leave us a like and a follow, give us a subscribe, that would be fantastic, and we'll see you next time.